Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders, make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. My guest for this episode is Dr. Melanie Gray, who is a PhD prepared nurse, educator, and trauma-informed leadership consultant with over 25 years in healthcare and higher education. She helps mission-driven leaders prevent burnout, lead with emotional integrity, and build cultures of care that support both people and purpose. Rooted in neuroscience and trauma-informed practice, Dr. Gray turns complex research on stress and the nervous system into practical, real-time tools for nonprofit leaders. With a background in nursing leadership and frontline clinical work, she teaches leaders to recognize overload personally and on their teams and respond with clarity instead of reactivity. I'm so excited to have her on because all of these things are like some of my most favorite topics. So welcome, Melanie. It's such a pleasure to have you. Before we dive into these really important topics, would you just share a little bit about yourself personally?
Yes, I hail from the great state of Wisconsin, where we have Packers and we have the Bucks and we have the Brewers. Kind of was getting to be a sports fan, a nurse for over 20 years. I am always been purpose driven, have always been involved in some kind of service. I'm a member of a number of service organizations in my community. I've served on a lot of boards. I'm currently serving on the board, newly elected for a nonprofit called Repairers of the Breach in Milwaukee, and they serve primarily the housing insecure, those people that have no place to live. And they have a warming center, they offer food. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to serve in this capacity because, people, the homeless it's not a sexy nonprofit, if I could say that. People don't run to serve the homeless. And so I really want to change that narrative in my community.
Oh, it's so important. I laugh because I have done work with organizations who work to support housing stability, security, work with homeless populations. And it surprises and frustrates me that it is such an unpopular topic because dealing with housing is like a linchpin issue that if you solve that for somebody, it leads to pathways to sobriety, pathways to getting mental health care, getting physical health care, children growing up in having stability and not repeating the cycle of whatever it is that they were born into. It's so important. So I'm preaching to the choir with our audience and with you, but I just wanted to throw a little good energy on. I think it's important, and I think it, if I put on my marketing, I don't think it has to be such an unpopular issue. I think it can be presented better, and people will be like, of course I want to support that.
Well, with compassion, right? I think it comes to having compassion for your fellow human being.
Yeah.
And in my experience, I have seen a judgment on people that are homeless, like they're lazy and they're not trying and there's enough work out here. Well, we don't understand. That's where the trauma informed care, I think, comes in, because when trauma informed care helps you consider what has happened to someone, not what is wrong with someone,
Yeah.
when we do not see them managing or communicating or living in a way that is comfortable or seemly to us.
Yeah.
We do not know. The social drivers of health are real, and they have impacted people in ways that we cannot even imagine. Our compassion and sensitivity is not an option. It needs to be there. And if we don't have it, I'm going to just say we should check our.
I am with you. And that's so, I haven't heard it described from that trauma informed lens before, but I so resonates with me that understanding what's happened to people, understanding what their situation is, quickly flips the way we think about, how they're showing up. And we often can go from thinking that they're showing up poorly or in a lazy way to like, oh my God, this person just climbed freaking Mount Everest, right? Like, I'm impressed.
Well, we should be impressed with the resilience.
Yes.
Right? If we're talking about the homeless, just as example, housing insecure, forgive me for not saying that. The housing insecure, we should be impressed with their resilience.
Yes.
They show up like we all do.
Yeah.
And they're still striving. People are still striving for better, even if that better is a warm meal and a warm place to stay. That's a level of resilience needs to really be respected, right? And people don't remember that trauma can develop in the womb. That mother's stability and the stress that she might have been under can impact that baby in the womb. And then when that baby is born, the research is proving that infants can still be impacted by PTSD, right? We might think, they hear noises. They don't know what the noises are, but they can be startling. And if they're not nurtured and they're not fed and they're not diapers are not changed, those are basic needs that are not being met, that infant is going to respond to. Their brain is still triggering, it's still firing, the stress is there. And so ongoing stress does impact brain development. Now, into adulthood. Now, the research does show that when people are given warm and nurturing relationships, specifically with children, that can be turned around, that the brain development can be enhanced, and they don't have to live with that forever. But many people do. And how many of us can go have a conversation and say, hey, when I was in the womb and when I was 2 months old, this was going on. And no one can have a conversation,
Yeah.
right? So we have to seek to understand perhaps there is something in that person's history that is impacting their present. And I'm needed to show compassion to help them move forward.
Yeah. So well said. Of course, thinking about our listeners, that makes me think about the nonprofit leaders out there and the effect of the stress and anxiety that they often are working under day to day. It makes me think of, I had a call with an executive director just the other day, a prospective client. And so I was asking her all about her organization and her role. And she was so like on top of it, energy together. And then I asked her, how about you? How are you feeling? How's the overwhelm? And she broke into tears. And to me, that it's common, but I really feel like that's a late stage that I hope we can change the culture in the nonprofit space so that our leaders aren't getting to that point. Tell me about that experience and how we can learn to see the signs earlier and what tools we can use to address them?
Well, I liken that experience for the nonprofit leader to that of nurses, people in emergency rooms, right? They're dealing with a lot of things we'd like not to see, the challenges that people have, man's inhumanity to man, and that the volume of that impact of sadness and challenges can really lead to compassion fatigue and just that sense of vicarious trauma. I'm not in trauma, but I'm living everyone else's trauma. And so that impacts how I show up. I think that nonprofit leaders have to be self-aware that yes, I am feeling stressed. I and they have to consider how to set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to set boundaries on the capacity that they really have in their nonprofit. If you only have $100,000 or $10,000 of support, that is what you have. And you cannot feel bad because you can't do more. We're setting boundaries for yourself and being okay with what you can do that you must do for yourself. You must care for yourself. And you have to set boundaries on what you can do for others. And that's hard.
Yeah.
I think you also have to know when you're in a space and you need to get away.
Yeah.
I think you have to make sure that your lifestyle as a nonprofit leader is one where you are turning it off at 4:30 or 5, and then you're not answering email all night. You're not taking the laptop home. You're spending dedicated time with your family, your friends, things that can feed you. And if you don't know what can feed you, then that's a real sign to break and to have some reflection time to find that space again.
Yeah. So I think that's extra important for the leaders because I often say to like executive directors I work with, like, you set the pace, right? And you set it in how quickly you respond to an email. Like, I know an executive director's in trouble when I email them and they email instantly every time. I'm like, oh, that's reactivity. You're just watching that email, just shooting responses. That's not you
Yeah,
controlling your time. And when things are
exactly.
intense, I'm like, you can actually use delaying a response to just slow it down for everybody, right? You can get the person on the other side to get some time to think by just not responding right away. It can be
Well,
simple.
right. Because you teach people how to treat you.
Yeah.
You
Go
know,
there.
you
Tell me more
you
about
teach them you teach people how you teach your team how to treat you. You teach your team how they, like, how they should be leading for the people that are in their sphere of responsibility. And so teach them how in a way that supports your emotional safety and boundaries as a leader and helps them do the same because as a leader when your team burns out and you have to replace them, that is expensive for your organization. That impacts the support you can give to those that you want to serve. And because sometimes in some nonprofits, you don't have maybe all of the bells and whistles a Fortune 500 company might offer in terms of benefits. That culture that you set is really important to retaining and engaging your team members.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I want to ask you a little more about reactivity, right? Because this burnout, as we're talking about it, is related to kind of, are you that firefighter in reactive mode? Are you that emergency responder? Or are you able to shift gears into being proactive? And I imagine this is a skill that like nurses need to pick up because every day is an emergency, especially if you're an emergency room, an ER nurse, right? But if you treat every day like an emergency, you're going to burn out fast. So how do you take intense situations, but flip from being reactive to being proactive?
Well, I think part of that is in planning and having systems and having conversations, again, the boundaries with your team. Just because you have the opportunity to expand doesn't mean you should.
Can you say that again? I want ever.
Just because I can sing it for you, just because you have the opportunity to expand doesn't mean you should. It doesn't mean you should, because the impact, the ongoing impact and stress for your team and your organization is not always worth it. You don't always have to say yes. And all money's not good money. You know, all money is not good money.
Let's talk about bad money, because I think people really learn. They're like, of course I need money. Like, I'll take it all. But what are some of the money horror stories? Where can it go wrong?
Well, it can go wrong when you accept more. You should accept money and your funder has expectations that you don't have the staff to fill. So that creates burnout and stress, and you're putting more on people than they signed up for.
So true.
Yep. And then that elevates the frustration. And I don't have to take this. That's not the, culture. It makes the leader look unorganized too.
Yeah.
You look disorganized if something's coming, and something's always coming. I think that leaders have to, when new opportunities show up, at least make sure you bring it to your team and say, this is an opportunity. How can we develop capacity? Or do you think we should say no? Because it can sometimes cost you more money to accept that money than it's not always that it puts you ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you really have to be, I think, strategic planning for our executive leaders is really important, because that helps you keep your word to yourself, to your funders, to your team, and people you serve. We plan to do A, B, and C in 2025. And that is all that we did. Or that's what we plan to do next year. And you have to be very careful, because that strategic plan should align with your budget, your staff, your mission, your vision, so that you stay aligned and you stay whole. And then if you want to scale, plan the scale for 2027 and 2026 intentionally.
Yeah.
Intentionally, because that's really important for the leader's psychological safety, for their team, and for the longevity of the organization. I've seen, I sadly finished the board term in March of this year, and they kept reaching. I got, guys, we should settle down. We're reaching, and ultimately, the leader made a bigger reach than they should have in terms of loans, and it really spiraled the organization into a very sad place. And I had been on that board for 4 years, and I finished my term and didn't have to deal with all of that. But that happened right after, like 2 months after I left. And so we have to be careful, right? And in terms of stress and burnout, leaders have to, one, take care of themselves, take care of their team, and so that their mission aligned and vision aligned for the people that you work with, as well as those you want to serve. Have you ever seen a nonprofit, or you probably have in your experience, or heard of one, where their mission and vision says one thing on the website with the, oh, that's so wonderful. And then their team is like, oh, you don't never want to work there. Oh, no. It's like,
Oh, I certainly have, right? And often organizations come to me with a visionary leader, and this is probably just who I attract, but they want to grow, they want to scale. And I'm like, that's great. And then usually in the first few months, we end up opening the cans of worms, right? At a pace that I feel like they can handle. And it's like, actually, before we grow, we need to rework our systems. We need to rework our programs. We need to fix how we do funding. We need to sometimes let go half of our staff and replace them because we hired just whoever without really who we need, right?
Say it. Because you preach, and you have to put a pause. I have to speak to that.
Yeah, tell me.
Because part of the stress, I believe, in my experience, that nonprofit leaders have is they hire warm bodies
Yes.
and they don't hire the best people to do the job.
Yes.
And then they struggle with these people that are not the best fit. You need the right people
Yes.
who can really do the work. An efficient person can do the job of 2 or 3 people with the right systems.
That's right.
We just don't need a warm body. That is so important. I'm so glad you said that because I have seen that over and over again
Yeah.
in my years of experience with nonprofits.
It is me too. So, so true. And unfortunately, the reality is fixing it is not a bunch of like workshops or staff retreats. Like you got to change the
Girl,
people.
no, that's another pin to preach on right there. No, that's another pin to preach because programs do not change behavior.
That's right.
Programs do not change cultures. And so when we're talking about trauma-informed leadership, it's really creating a whole culture of safety, a culture of emotional safety, a culture of kindness where we're working together toward one goal and everyone feels that they are a part. Trauma-informed care means you're also looking at your team and you're building that.
Yeah.
You're seeing that. You are encouraging them and you're giving them opportunities to better serve. So rather than having another retreat, send a team member to get some additional training where they feel that they're being individually seen and built into. It's much cheaper often to invest in one person who's going to come back and do well than just some, random fluffy kind of experience. That is so important that in trauma-informed culture and knowing that you're serving people that also often have needs, but your team often comes from communities and situations. They're not going to come and tell you, "Hey, I was abused," or "Hey, I was homeless as a kid," or
Right.
they're not going to tell you. But the Center for Disease Control says that prior to the pandemic, over 67% of all people had some type of trauma, community trauma, violence, divorce, chronic illness, all kind of experiences. And you add the pandemic and just our world life right now, $6 a dozen eggs and inflation going through the roof and interest rates on mortgages and people wondering how they're going to feed their family. People are coming with trauma of life.
Yeah.
Just the stress of life. Our teams are. And that cannot be ignored as a nonprofit leader, I think. Having additional sympathy and empathy there can really help the organization.
Yeah, I so agree. And I often see teams, they're thinking, when you ask them about like their values, I like to talk about guiding principles because I think those are
Yes.
choices about behavior more than beliefs, and values is like a mix of beliefs and choices. But when I ask people about their values, often they're like, this is how we treat our clients. This is, our clients, our clients. I'm like, let's get focused on how you want to show up, how you want each person on your team to show up. And if we show up and we respect each other and we care for each other, then that will flow into how you treat your clients. But whenever I hear that client focused talk, I'm like, I bet that how you want to treat your clients and how you treat yourselves and what you expect of yourselves, you're not on the same page. And I think for me, those things need to be in alignment. I
I so agree. Because you should show up as one person, one organization. How we treat each other should align. That whole mission and vision should align with how we treat the people that we serve in our organization. It should not look different. But again, so often there is a disconnect. And often because of the stressors that leaders may feel around funding and development. And I believe that executive leaders, this is my mantra now, I'm gonna put it out there.
Go for it.
But I believe that nonprofit leaders have to find better ways to collaborate with other nonprofits in their area, maybe having a consortium. Why does everybody need an HR manager? Why? When, why? And I believe that we can be better around funding. Why don't we create our own product? Is there an opportunity for you to have some asset or income producing opportunity that is not totally funding from an outside, a grant source that is not totally funder directed. Why don't you have, could you have, I'm not saying a cafe is always the answer, but is there a product or a digital product or something that you can develop that can be an income source that you can grow over time, that you control? Does everyone, and this is my big thing that I might be, I'm off topic. So, but the gala,
Yeah, bring it, bring it. The gala.
about the
What
gala.
are we going to do with that gala?
I mean, why are we giving $60,000, $30,000 to hotels?
Yeah.
Right. So in order to raise money, we have to give 30,000, 40,000 to a hotel or, conference center. I don't think that is always the best use of money. I'm not saying that there shouldn't ever be a gala, but I think that we can think differently about fundraising than one big idea.
Yeah.
That where so much money goes to somebody else.
I completely agree. And I've put a lot of thought to this over the years. And recently I've come across a conversation that's really helping make people kind of more aware. I think what galas and social media campaigns and public display things and receiving grants are easy to see from the outside. So we see our nonprofit neighbors doing these things and we assume that is the way, the good way, the effective way to bring in funds. But I'll tell you all the secret. The nonprofits who have lots of money and aren't worried about money, they get their base. I like to think of it as a layer cake. And the bottom of the layer is large individual gifts from donors that are unrestricted and lifelong partners to these organizations. And I think the reason why more people don't realize that it's there is because it's invisible to the outside world, because that kind of fundraising looks like private conversations, right? Between someone inside the organization and a donor, and you don't see it happening. And oftentimes there aren't big announcements that somebody donated $50,000 because a lot of those people, they're not there. They don't want that big flashy announcement. They're there to have that meaningful connection. And so it's invisible and we don't see it. In the other category you mentioned, I'm still surprised how many nonprofits believe that they're not allowed to generate revenue, excess revenue. We're allowed to call it profit in the nonprofit space, by the way, from services or products.
Yeah.
They just have to be related to your mission enough that they don't get taxed as an unrelated business income. But there's gray area. That's a big bubble of things, like if you're a homeless, serving organization, you could have a product about, housing and knowing about housing in your neighborhood, right? That you sell. You could have a guide. You could have mental health education there are many, many coaches and therapists making lots of money selling courses on how to feel better in various ways. And nonprofits can be doing that too. Many of them are experts in how to better our lives in some ways.
Absolutely. And this all reduces the stress and trauma.
Yeah.
You have to set fewer your boundaries of creativity should flow, but you really must reduce your financial stress by being smart about your strategy. And what you see your neighbor do doesn't mean you have to do it. You have to
And it
know
doesn't
who
mean
you
it's
serve.
working for them either.
And people never tell you when it's not.
They don't.
They never tell you.
But you and I know, I mean, we look inside organizations and we go, there's a lot not working here.
Yeah. And so I believe leaders have to be self-aware. I mean, they have to take care of themselves. They have to have time put themselves on their calendar. They have to have reflective time. I would suggest one way to set culture is like, why do you have to have meetings on Fridays? Why can't Friday just be a no meeting day?
Yeah. Why does it even have to be a work day? I just put out
Why can't
what?
it be a catch up day? I know you have to serve your clients, or, clients, patients, those you serve, but can you do it in a way that can give your team a Friday off, a Friday afternoon off?
Yeah.
Can you tell your team that any email you don't receive by noon on Friday will not be addressed to the following week? Why can't you allow them to say that? Why can't your team be able to have, you know, 10 days where in the year where they have to take a child to an appointment, they don't lose hours off of work?
Yeah. Oh, I love
I mean,
I haven't heard that specific one. I mean, I'm a fan of like unlimited vacation days. You just do we have a reasonable job and you do your job and you take the days off you need. But I think that specifically hits on some real, equity related issues like taking your kid or a dependent or an elderly parent to a doctor's appointment should just be like should be like your own sick day, right? Something you need to do.
Yeah, or you can just work from home, or find another way to manage that time so that people have that flexibility. I think we have to remember as leaders that our teams, everyone on our team is not necessarily a six-figure earner.
Right.
And so many people on your team are might be having some of the same challenges as the people that you are serving. And it's important how we frame conversations within the organization and that we don't lose touch of the needs of the people that are working with us,
Yeah.
and maybe try to love on them. Be aware, not that you're ever speaking down to anyone or pointing them out, but I think that awareness is really important, and that we don't have big eyes and little U's, that
Yeah.
receptionists should feel just as valued and significant as your service manager or your director.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought up team again because I want to go into a very specific issue around culture and letting people go. So I think that, of course, firing people, letting people go is really hard, especially for the
Mhm.
heart-driven leaders. I like to think of letting people go as when it's not the right fit. We're going to like open the doors of the cage, roll out the red carpet, and it's a mutually beneficial experience. But within figuring that out, there's like this hard to untangle line for leaders of how much are we supporting somebody's situation, their needs, being trauma informed, and at what point do we want people to show up one way and they want to show up a different way? And I'm often in that spot where, like, at a certain point, like, we are not our employees' behavior modification therapy,
And
right? If
correct,
they don't
correct.
want to behave this way, they need to go to a place where they can behave in the way that's aligned for us.
Right.
Help
Mhm.
untangle this for leaders to really think through when is it no longer being supportive and the person actually needs to let go, or when do we need to
Well,
be thinking of
you have to have progressive, if you would, I don't wanna call it discipline, but you have to have progressive conversations. If you First, we have to onboard people honestly. We have to be honest when we hire them. Then we have to onboard them and properly socialize them to the organization. I'm just going to use a homeless shelter, for example. If I have an admin that I am hiring, in that hiring, before I have her sign, I'm gonna have her come in and spend a couple hours serving, watching them serve the homeless and watch them work with people throughout in all the services that we provide and see how they react. That will help them know if they're a good fit, and it helps me get feedback. Then if I decide to hire them on, we have to socialize people to the organization, because we have to understand that people don't know what we think they know. Right? We think people know how to come to work and dress and how to connect, but you might be dealing with the first generation person who's never been to college, who just first generation college graduate, who never saw anybody have a job before, who never saw anyone work in corporate culture. They don't know what you think they know. So you have to do the proper training, onboarding, letting them experience the entire organization, and then let them know we're going to have check-ins once a week for the first 30 days, and then maybe every 2 weeks, and getting the feedback and doing the coaching. And then you got to know after 90 days if it's going to work.
Yeah.
If you're really doing the coaching and looking at that person and having that ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
And many times people will be honest with you and say, this is not a good fit.
Yeah. I don't know if people believe it. So I want to reiterate it. I have had it when you set things up well, like you just described. People will often say, I don't think I'm the right fit. And in my experience, the only reason why they don't say it is out of like loyalty and care for the mission and the work. And they don't want to leave you hanging. So they'll avoid saying it. So then sometimes I feel like it is on the leader to be the first one to say, you know, and sometimes it's not even, I don't think you're the right fit, but it seemed like we'll be okay without you, you know, and that's one of those like compassionate release conversations. Like, I'm not sure if this is the right fit. I'm not sure if it's serving you. And I want you to know that if that feels true for you too, that we'll be okay without you, right? Like you can go and it won't hurt us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know, most executive directors are very well connected. And that's kind of why you have a board. I have this team member we hire is not a good fit. This is where I think their strengths might lie. Does anyone know the position so that we can help that person find a better fit? Sometimes there's a better fit right in your organization, but sometimes we have to use our network to help them land well somewhere else. One of the things I've observed with leaders over the years is that we struggle too long with the wrong people. It's energy draining. Stress, it's trauma, it's the trauma of it. It's the impact to your entire team. You know, the old adage, it only take one rotten apple to ruin the whole bunch. So you're not worth it. And I'm not meaning that a person that isn't fitting is rotten. I mean, but if they're not a good fit, it harms your entire culture.
That's right. It's like something in the gear that's like grinding and it starts to mess up the whole engine. Yeah.
Well, and personal leaders, everything is not personal. So they can't take that's another boundary. You can't take everything personal. And when someone doesn't work or something is not working, it is not always personal to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's just a wrong fit, not a wrong person, you know. I think like they can't be wrong or bad, but sometimes I'm always trying to train myself not to say bad, but say ineffective. Because when we're talking about business, when we're talking about nonprofits, we're focused on what's effective or impactful and what's not effective or not impactful. There isn't really a right, you know, that's how we define right or wrong. But I think right or wrong and good and bad are just a little too loosey-goosey.
Right.
For me.
It's just not a good fit.
You get into that judgmental territory of the quality of the person rather than the quality of the result.
Exactly.
We're at time, but I do want to ask you, in your knowledge of nonprofit leaders and thinking about nonprofit leaders, what's the one thing that if they kind of get that thing dialed in or done well, that makes everything else easier or unnecessary?
They have to dial in their plan. They really have to dial in their strategic plan. And they need a strategic plan for 3 to 5 years. And then they have to be willing to hold to that plan. What are the tools that are needed to drive that plan forward? A plan around finances, a plan around growing their team, building their culture. What are the physical, building needs? But having that plan and sticking to it is, I think, number one. Two, being able to be thoughtful, being able to stay mission driven, and developing a culture that is peaceful, restful, trauma-informed, and not just stressed.
Thank you. I love it. For those of you wanting more of Dr. Melanie Gray, who should be reaching out to you, and what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, the best way to reach out to me is drmelaniegray.com. I have 2 websites, actually, and also Dr. Melanie Gray, theconfidencecoach.com. Who should reach out to me are leaders that want to develop cultures of kindness and wellness. Yoga, just having time for yoga at work is not necessarily going to build your whole culture of wellness and help you be trauma informed in a way that helps you retain your team and lift engagement. So drmelaniegray.com or Dr. Melanie Gray, theconfidencecoach.com. Reach out, leaders, if you want to help with building your teams or if you want individual coaching. And thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. We'll have those links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Dr. Gray. And thank you out there for listening and everything you do to make our communities better. As with every episode, I have a favor to ask of our listeners. If you could take a moment to rate and review this podcast wherever you're listening to it, it helps boost the algorithm, helps other leaders like you find the podcast and get access to these resources. Or you can share it directly with a friend or colleague who would benefit. Until next time, all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.